How does the biggest star on the planet become a walking punchline? By 1968, that's what had happened to Elvis Presley. After years of making cheesy movies, his crown had been snatched by bands like the Beatles. He had one last shot to remind the role of who was. This is the story of how Elvis risked it all on its Singularity special, defied his controlling manager, and in one round, legendary out of television, pulled off what might just be the greatest comeback in music history. But before you can appreciate the comeback, you have to understand just how far he'd fallen. In the 1950s, Elvis wasn't just a singer, he was a culture earthquake. With a sneer, his swivel-lipless hips, and a voice that blended black rhythm and blues with white country music, he completely redrew the map of pop culture. He was dangerous, he was electrifying, and he was the undisputed king of rock and roll. The world was his kingdom. Then, it all started to fade. After a 2-year stint in the U.S. Army, Elvis returned to a world that was already moving on. And instead of taking back his throne on the stage, he was pushed into a different kingdom, Hollywood. His manager, dangerous Colonel Tom Martha, a carnival promoter at heart, saw a safer, more profitable path for his client. The plan? Turn the rebellious king of rock and maroon to a family-friendly movie star. And for a while, it worked. Movies made money, and the soundtrack sold. But the formula got old fast. Elvis found himself in a creative prison, churning out 3 bland, low-budget musical comedies a year. The scripts were flimsy, and the songs were often second-rate throwaways. Kind of like Harem Scam and Clanwick became chill the punchlines. The fire that wants to find him was being smothered by the Hollywood machine. His last #1 block hit was way back in 1962, and by 1967, his records weren't even cracking the top 20. While Elvis was singing the co-stars on a cardboard set, the music world had been set ablaze by the British invasion. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and a new wave of artists were writing their own songs. And speaking to the revolutionary spirit of the 1960s, Elvis, once the face of rebellion, now seemed like a dated relic. He was a millionaire trapped in a gilded cage, growing more and more frustrated with his career. The story gave that he was once mistaken for an Elvis impersonator on Sunset Boulevard, a heartbreakingly perfect symbol for just how far the king had fallen. He'd lost his voice, his relevance, and his identity. He was on the verge of becoming a ghost, a footnote in the low revolution he helped create. By 1968, even Colonel Parker could see the movie formula wasn't merging. Box office numbers were dropping, and something had to be done to boost Elvis's image. The solution, a television special. Parker made a deal with NBC, and his vision was painfully safe. Elvis, in a tuxedo, surrounded by Christmas cheer, singing holiday songs. Well, cozy, family-friendly are, with the Colonel's perfect plan of quick passion that would double of another Christmas album. It was also a recipe for total relevance. But luckily, the show's director, Steve Binder, had other ideas. Binder was a young, rebellious producer who was way more interested in the liturgy of modern music than in safe television. He wasn't even sure he wanted to do an Elvis special, seeing him as a washed-up star. In their first meeting, Elvis asked Binder what he thought of his career. "I negated to him straight, I think your career is in the toilet." Instead of firing him, Elvis actually listened. He saw a chance to do something real. Binder saw something in Elvis, to a flicker of that old fire buried on the years of Hollywood cheese. He pitched a new idea for Did the Christmas Game. This will be a special about Elvis himself, telling his life story through his music. The stage was set for a battle, Binder and Elvis on one side, fighting for art and risk, and Colonel Parker on the other, fighting for the faith, cynical, money-making machine. The Colonel fought them every step of the way. That was one of the few times in his career Elvis stood his ground. He put his trust in Binder. The director's plan was to capture lightning in a bottle. He'd noticed that during breaks, Elvis would jam with his old bandmates, and the energy was just electric. Binder knew it had to be the heart of the show, an intimate and played session with Elvis on a tiny stage, surrounded by a live audience. Bringing his old original guitarist Scotty Moore and drummer DJ Fontana, for the first time in years. But when it was time to phone, Elvis froze. After 7 years away from a live audience, he was terrified. He was in the makeup room, convinced he couldn't go on, that he'd forgotten how to perform. Binder had to talk him onto the stage, telling him to just say hello and walk off. But he had to. But something happened when Elvis sat down, dressed head to toe in that now iconic black leather suit. He whipped out at the faces. Just feet away. He started to play, and you could feel the energy shift. When nerves mounted array, replaced by their old swagger and that playful sneer, he wasn't just singing the songs, he was reclaiming them, tearing through Jailhouse Rock, Heartbreak Hotel, and Waddy, Nisqually, with a power that had them locked away for years. In those moments, he was in the movie star. He was an animal let out of its cage, reminding everyone and especially himself why he was the king. The final act of rebellion was the show's closing number. The crew insisted on a Christmas song. Inger and Elvis refused. The year 1968 had been rocked by the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy, events that deeply moved Elvis. Inger had a songwriter compose a piece that reflected Louis' turmoil and a yearning for hope, "If I Can Dream," with lyrics that echoed Dr. King's famous speech. It was a powerful plea for a better world. When Colonel Parker first heard it, he hated it, saying, "This ain't Elvis kind of song." That Elvis was determined to make a statement and fought to record it. He poured every ounce of himself into the performance. In the studio, backup singers were reportedly moved to tears, saying they'd never heard him sing with so much soul, standing on stage in a white suit, in front of giant red letters spelling his name. He delivered a performance for ages around desperate, and hope will cry from the heart. That became a defining cultural moment. On December 3, 1968, Singer Presents, Elvis aired on NBC. Anyone who tuned when expecting a cheesy Christmas special was in for a shock. What they saw was a revelation. It was a raw, visceral, and triumphant display that shattered the image of the Hollywood sellout. The special was a monster success, pouring in an incredible 42% of the television audience, and becoming NBC's biggest hit of the season. It earned rave reviews from critics who had long written him off, with one famously saying it was like watching a man find his way home again. The impact was immediate. The 68 comeback special didn't just revive his career, it kicked off a full-blown Elvis ascent. Suddenly, doors that had been slammed shut were flung wide open. The fear of being irrelevant was gone, replaced by a new confidence and artistic fire. Fueled by this energy, Elvis went back to the recording studio in Memphis and created what many still call his best work. That album, The Elvis in Memphis, was a masterpiece of soul and country, giving us timeless hits like The Socially Conscious in the Ghetto and the powerhouse anthem Suspicious Minds. Suspicious Minds would become his 18th and final #1 single in the U.S., a triumphant return to the top of the charts. The special also reignited his love for performing live. It led directly to his legendary residencies in Las Vegas, where he reinvented himself as one of the greatest live entertainers in history. For a shining moment, Elvis was back on top not just as a pop star, but as a vital, respected artist once more. The comeback special reminded the world that behind the caricature was a singular talent, who had changed music forever. The 1968 special wasn't just a hit TV show, it was a battle for an artist's soul. Elvis Presley risked his entire career by defying the commercial machine that had trapped him. And in doing so, he rescued his own legacy. He showed the skin of a movie star to revere the heart of a rock and roll king. It's a powerful lesson that real artistry can't be locked away forever. It just waits for the right moment to burn bright again.